So, when working on new regions, or even regions that are still within the very early stages, I try to, well, with the more medium and larger blocks, I try to remember to put greenery in. I'll show an example. So, for example, this city doesn't have any greenery, so you'd click into it. You then click the tree icon here, terraform, and then seed forest here, and then using shift and click, you are able to increase the area where you are able to plant trees like this. For example, that's just an example. Normally I would do more of the city. So for the smaller cities like these, I typically wouldn't bother, simply because the majority of the space in each city will get used up in the end. But what I typically do when I click on this city, I would typically put down what I would want to help develop the city. But when I come down to, say, for example, using airports, for example, or even, in fact, any sort of government type buildings even, I would typically sow trees on the plots, which then would help with the environment. I also typically, before I start allowing the city to grow, I would obviously plan out a rough area of where I would like the residential, commercial, and then this leftover space typically would be used for agricultural and industry. But I also find it is good to help the city in terms of transport by establishing the transport first, along with the relevant areas. In particular, as you can see, I have established rail. I've also included monorail, roads, bus, and also the subway. If I go to transport tools, miscellaneous, then subway, I can bring this back out and show you. I've also linked up all of the city with subway tunnels, so that for the further development, I've already got the tunnels and that ready, so that if, for example, I decide to increase the areas out here, I've already got the infrastructure ready to just put the station down. So when it comes to infrastructure such as, well, in particular the utilities, I typically try to use the wind power plants initially, just because it's better for the environment and doesn't produce pollution compared to, whether it be a gas power plant, coal power plant, or oil. In terms of water, I also try to water the whole city initially as well. So typically I only really put a couple of water towers initially in the city, but once the population increases and the demand for the water and power increases, I will typically increase these facilities, and in particular with the water and also with the transport, like what I've mentioned in past with the transport, but with the water as well. It is useful to help connect them to other cities, because depending on the city size, you may have to buy more water from another city to help with the supply. Otherwise, you may also be able to sell water to another city. Either way, if you sell it, you can generate income for the city. If you buy it, you lose income for the city. As you can see down below, there are different things that are relevant to keep an eye on, so such as environment, health, safety, traffic, education and land value. So the environment typically relates to how much pollution there is in the air and also in the water. The health, pretty self-explanatory, is the health of the Sims that live within the city. Safety refers to police and fire, which offers a protection against crime and fires. So typically, I'll show you. So you see how with the fires, with the fire station, they'll have a red symbol or red circle around them. That's the area of coverage. It's also the same with police stations. And for example, with health, you've got green circles around each. And with education, typically depending on where the residential areas is, where I typically tend to put the schools and libraries predominantly. But I do also try to put the libraries in the more rural areas as well, just simply to help cover the education a bit better. So in terms of traffic, that is something that is typically not something to really worry about at the moment. But once the city gets bigger, you will have to look at increasing the roads and possibly increasing public transport. In terms of the budget, so if you click down here where it has the Sim Roll-In button, you can click on the current budget that is currently in place. Green is all the income that you will get. Red is all the expenses. So in taxes, as your cities develop, the monthly estimates will change, and you can choose to increase each of the income taxes depending on your requirements. To help reduce the worsening of the environment, you may choose to increase the dirty industry tax, which can help to reduce their impact to the environment. At the moment, because I don't have any Sims, this is all going to show nothing, but as time will progress in each city, this will all increase, and it will be very depending on the size of the city and how much residential, commercial and industrial areas you also have in place. So city ordinances is basically just anything you can use. Neighbourhood deals, that would be typically whether you're, for example, selling water, for example, business deals. As you can see, I've currently got federal prison, casino and area 5.1. So basically how I unlocked them was by using the cheat by using Control X to enter this. You don't deserve it, which enters that. Basically it will come up, so if you go down to civic tools, then rewards and business deals, it will come up with a list of all of the available buildings that you can build. And typically, especially in these smaller cities, I try to build like area 5.1, the army base, that kind of thing, and casino, just typically because they tend to take up more space. This is especially handy, or at least in my opinion, before putting down agricultural and industrial areas, because at least then, once you've placed down these items, you'll have a rough idea as to what remaining space you have left. Other big buildings include the country club, for example, the zoo, typically, the university, just to name a few. And if you ever need more cash, say for example you're getting low down here, if you go back to Control X and type in weakness pays and enter, you'll see that the amount of money just went up by 1,000 simoleons. If you do that again, press Control X, then up, it'll come back with the weakness pays again. If you hold down Shift, press enter, and whilst you're pressing Shift, press up and enter, for example, it'll keep adding 1,000 simoleons, and you keep doing that to help increase your balance to a desired balance, to help to reduce the burden. The other way you can increase your money is if you go back to your current balance, go down here to monthly expenses and take out a loan up to an amount of, I believe, 200,000 off the top of my head. Yeah, 200,000 is the maximum you can take out each month, but there's a borrowing limit of 2 million. So you'll also notice that there's public safety, which of course is the cost to run the fire and police departments, as well as the Department of Corrections, which is the jails. Transport, well, that's the cost to run the airports, the roads, and mass transport, which is subway, rail, bus network, that kind of thing. Utilities, well, that's power, water, and sanitation. And if you wish, I believe city ordinance is, off the top of my head, would be like for the income would be the running of the casino, and then like your expenses for the city ordinances would be like trying to like neighborhood beautification, smoke alarms, that kind of thing. So when it comes down to building styles, typically when you first start a city, you usually starts off with change building style every certain amount of years where you can change it. I typically just go to build all styles at once, at least then it will just constantly update each building as you progress. And yeah, so if you come over here to data views, you can show by pressing up, depending on what you want to have a look at, whether it be fire hazards, power, health, whatever it might be that you want to have a look at, just to keep a track as to what you want to do. But otherwise it's not necessarily an important thing to keep a track of in the early stages. And this is just like a graph as to mayor rating, which is here. And then if you go over here, that's all of your advisors, and it will come up. They will typically say what they would like to see improved. But you can also see down here, which is here. Click on that and it will also show you what things they suggest to help improve your city.